1.
This is your video notes for the rest of the trig. So we're solving triangles. So in the other cases, we were just listing ratios or pushing the sign button when we knew the angle. In this case, we're going to find every missing side and every missing angle, and then we're going to do some word problems. As long as you have a right triangle and you know two pieces of information, either two sides or a side and angle, you can find all the other sides and the other angle. Okay, so measure of angle P, obviously right away, you can just take 90 minus 37. PQ. Okay, so what I do is I look at this, I have enough information, I look at this and I say, this is my reference angle. So this is the opposite side, this is the hypotenuse, and this is the adjacent side. And so to find PQ, that is the opposite side, I know the hypotenuse. So if I know the opposite and the hypotenuse, then I'm using sine. So the sine of 37 equals the opposite, which is PQ, over the hypotenuse. And by the way, this whole PowerPoint is on Canvas as well, so if you want to go through it that way. So to solve this, I multiply both sides by 22, and I get PQ equals 22 times the sine of 37, 13.2. And at that point, you can use Pythagorean theorem to find the third side, or say this is the adjacent side. So adjacent over hypotenuse is cosine. So the cosine of 37 equals QR over 22, and you solve it the same way. And then a double check would be to use Pythagorean theorem. So essentially when we get these problems set up, there's going to be three different kinds of equations that we have. And if you can solve these three, then all you got to do is be able to set stuff up. So the first one is pretty easy. If I want to solve for x, I multiply both sides by 40. 40 cancels out. So I have 40 times the sine of 40, 25.7. The second one looks similar, but this time the x is in the denominator. So if I was doing this using algebra, remember this is just a number here. If I were doing this using algebra, I'd multiply both sides by x to get the x to cancel out. And I would have x times the sine of 40 equals 40. So then to get x by itself, I would divide by 40. So 40 divided by sine of 40, 62.2. So what you may notice as a shortcut, and you I'm sure learned this when you did trig before, was that those two switch places. And so as long as you remember that shortcut, it's good. If you don't remember the shortcut, then you need to do some algebra there. The last one is the sine of x equals 12 over 17. That means I'm trying to find an angle. So I need to do second sine. If I push regular sine, I get a number, and I'm suspicious because I'm like, there's not an angle that's really that small very often. So I'm going to do second sine, inverse sine, and then it's going to tell me an angle. So all these have different answers, same numbers in the equations. That would be in degrees. Those are the three types of solving rules. Okay, so take a look at, again, if you want to use the PowerPoint instead of watching this video, you can do that and come back to the video if you don't understand something. I'm just going to hit a few of the points that you might not get from looking at the PowerPoint. So this is generally what a word problem looks like. It's kind of cheesy when they give you the picture, but height is always at a right angle with the horizon, and then you just read the problem. The key on any of these is to get the numbers in the right place, because again, here's your equation, and that's one of the types of equations right there. To solve that, there's only three types of equations you can get. here is the other key to all of this, is that they're going to give you something called the angle of elevation or the angle of depression. Notice those are the same measure, okay? A lot of people, they'll say like the angle of depression from the top of a building down to a point on the ground is 35 degrees, and they want to put it right here. There is not a special name. That's the angle of death is what I call that. You're never going to get the problem right if you put the angle there. So if they give you angle of elevation, it's the same as the angle of depression. So if it's 35, it's 35 both places, because it has to be made with a reference to a horizontal line. And we'll show you a couple examples like that. Okay, so number one here. Let's find the height of a flagpole, which casts a shadow of 9.32 meters. So 9.32 meters shadow. Flagpole's here. And the sun makes an angle of 63 degrees to the horizontal. So the 63 degrees, the sun is up here. The sun is always in the same reference for making shadows. So if we had a person, they would have they could find similar distances. This could have also said the angle of elevation from the tip of the shadow up to the sun. The angle of depression from the top of the flagpole would be 63 degrees. Any of those would also work. So in this case, they're going to ask us to find the height of the flagpole. So there's the height. So I look at my reference angle, and the height is the opposite side, and the number we know is the adjacent side. So opposite and adjacent, that is tangent. So I can write an equation. The tangent of 63 is h over 9.32. Multiply to solve. Number two here, if you're talking about an incline to the horizontal, again, that's the same as angle of elevation, but we're going up a hill. And I just wanted to show you the difference here. The base of the hill is at sea level. So it says, find my height above sea level. That would be this. And the other question says, how far have I walked? So that would be asking for the hypotenuse. So those are different problems with different numbers in there. All right, keep going here. A train must climb a constant gradient, that means constant slope, of 5.5 meters for every 200 meters of track. Now, normally slope is rise over run. This is not the best description in my opinion, but it climbs 5.5 for every 200 meters of track. So they're saying find the angle of incline, find this angle right here. Well, again, this side is opposite, and this side is hypotenuse. So you look at the picture, opposite, I know the opposite side and hypotenuse side. So the sine of my angle that I'm going to find is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So this is one of those three solving situations where you're finding an angle. So this is that situation. If you're finding an angle, you're using the inverse button. Pretty small angle, 1.58 degrees, but that makes sense because it's a train. Otherwise, it would slip back down the tracks. One more I want to do, number 7 here, and see if I have time. It's a little bit tricky. The angle of elevation to the top of a tree, 23.6 degrees from a point 250 meters from the base. So this is all about making the picture. So here's the tree, and the angle of elevation is 20